What movie is so disturbing, you would never watch it again? By AskReddit.
Antichrist is probably the only movie I've ever turned off in discomfort. I have a strong stomach. Apparently genital mutilation close-ups are my limit.
The fox eating itself really disturbed me, too. Same with the lady ferociously masturbating. Just a dark, strange movie. It was recommended to me by a friend who is super chipper and upbeat. Very odd.
I watched it in a cinema as a teenager. Some guy literally ran out of the theater apparently having a panic attack. That sounds made up, but it's absolutely true and was weird as hell. I thought it was the most pretentious nonsense, go nowhere tripe I'd ever seen. I wonder if I'd think differently now I'm grown up.
Same, but watched it on a date in my 20s. We shook hands that night after the movie.
You'd better have been dating an art student, otherwise seeing a Lars von Trier movie on a romantic night out is one of the most colossal screw-ups you could make.
As someone who is prone to having panic attacks, especially in cinemas and other loud, intense places, I totally believe the part about the guy running out of the session. I probably would have had an attack watching that movie in a theater too.
I love this movie, but Lars definitely tries to be horrible just to be horrible with his other movies, and my patience for this is limited.
I knew what that spoiler tag was covering and I still clicked just to see how much you included there. I mean, you could have also mentioned the bloody ejaculate lol, edit, well that's certainly the strangest award I've ever received, wow thanks.
Lol, the spoiler tag isn't working on your comment.
This thread was made for Lars von Trier.
Old one, but it's seared in my memory, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover. I actually paid to see it in the theater. I don't know what I was thinking.
I saw this in my early 20s and came back to it as an older, wiser adult. It's visually brilliant and emotionally devastating. We now think of Michael Gambon as Dumbledore, forgetting how tall and physically imposing he is. And we now think of Helen Mirren as Prim and Amp, proper QE2, forgetting how excellent her emotional performances are. There's no extraneous detail or character interaction in this movie.
Anyone mind giving a brief summary of what the film is about and why it's so effed up?
Dead girl. Some guys find a dead girl, she is a zombie, and proceed to continuously have sex with her body. This progresses until one of the guys begins cutting holes into her body to have sex with, as these holes are warmer and cozier, and then he gets infected when she bites him.
I've never seen the movie, but I just read about it on Wikipedia. Apparently he gets infected not because she just happened to bite him, but because she bit his DK after he tried to get a blowjob from a zombie.
If the past year has taught us anything, it is that a substantial fraction of the population would give it a go.
I used to think end-of-the-world movies were unrealistic in how crazy people acted in a crisis. Now after watching COVID, I think they're unrealistic and they don't show people acting crazy and irrational enough.
Honestly, just reading your description has effed me up.
This sounds more like a effed up PO rather than a movie.
Yay, sounds like the director was horny and had some strange kinks. Also imagine playing a role like this guy described to fuck.
So it actually exists. I thought it was all a fever dream.
The movie tries, I think, to be an allegory for sexual objectification. It literalizes a common theme in feminist thought, that since an object is something deprived of genuine agency and its own point of view, sexual objectification is, especially when taken to an extreme, essentially mortification, treating a living person as if they were lifeless, a corpse. But the movie, I think, just veers off into misery p. Too much attention is given to the monstrous glee of the men involved, to the point where it's almost a mondo movie, a kind of exploitation film masquerading as an expression of moral outrage for what it depicts.
I saw this movie when I was like 13 and my sister was 15. We thought we were watching a scary movie. It was so horrible. I think about that scene in the bathroom all the time, and I'm 22 now.
I can't remember what it's called, but it was based off the true story where that girl was hitchhiking and got kidnapped and lived in a box for 7 years. Wasn't it called The Girl in the Box or something along those lines? Edit, it's called Girl in the Box.
I read the book about it and was disturbed for months.
It seriously messed up my view of other humans. There were so many ways they were doing this all in broad daylight, and nobody knew the truth. I started wondering who around me was secretly being held captive, or might have a slave in the backyard.
Her name was Colleen Stan. I read the book too. https://images-na.ssl-images-amazon.com/images/i/919osenza2l.jpg.
Yikes. The guy that did it may get out soon. Per Wikipedia, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/kidnapping_of_Colleen_Stan. On April 16, 2015, his request for parole was denied, and Hooker will be eligible for another hearing in 2035. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, California officials contacted Stan and advised her that they were looking into possibly granting him parole in March 2021.
Wow. And the guy who created a dark web market is doing 2 life sentences. Edit. I realize that he is an asshole who has probably committed crimes that he deserves life for. That being said, he did not get sentenced for those crimes. He is sitting for money laundering, computer hacking, conspiracy to traffic narcotics. Also, there are plenty of people who hire hits on people who only get about 10 to 20 years in prison, so that was not the reason for his 2 life sentences.
Quite clearly the US government does not care about letting monsters loose, but they sure do care about taxes and controlling the flow of money.
Colleen is from my town. She's been in the news just last week because her kidnapper and captor is up for parole and she's justifiably upset.
The Perfect Victim is the true crime book. The survivor is named Colleen Stan and the perpetrator is Cameron Hooker. This happened in my hometown before I was born, but my mum was best friends with the DA's assistant who worked on the trial. She was the model to show how Colleen spent her time in the box. I also went to high school with Cameron Hooker's niece. Always found it strange the extended, resulting family members stuck around after everything. Red Bluff is a very small town, so history and reputation stick a lot longer than elsewhere.
Also grew up in the area. I've been in the basement of the house she was originally held in. It was creepy to look at the little closet they kept her in and realize that it was a prison for all intents and purposes.
They are currently talking about releasing this monster on parole due to COVID. Please help.
https://www.change.org/p/gavin-newsom-stop-the-release-of-covid-19. No way should this guy get parole. He's a monster and he's lucky enough to be alive.
Ratatouille, God, I don't even want to explain.
Seeing this pop up in a sea of cannibal holocaust and we need to talk about Kevin gave me whiplash.
We still make fun of my dad because he bought that thinking it was Ratatouille 2 LMAO, rolling on the floor laughing, rolling on the floor laughing, rolling on the floor laughing.
Sallow.
I was gonna say the same thing. That movie is effed up. Made me sick.
I can really appreciate the level of description and the comment chain rating in this thread right now. Just vague enough stuff at the top level and the more effed up poo below so I can keep my head right.
The film's disturbing enough, but holy F, the book is so much worse. You know that final sequence with all that torture? Well, it's so much more graphic than that. The film is effing tame compared to the book, and thank F the Marquis de Sade, who is the Sado in sadomasochism, never finished the manuscript.
I had to sign a waiver at the video store when I rented this in 2009. Lots of poop, lots of rape.
They actually made you sign a waiver? I'm surprised you could even rent it in stores.
My high school teacher recommended this to me. I went home and watched it. I just felt empty afterwards.
I'm sorry, your high school teacher recommended it?
I legitimately think this movie is written up to me more disturbing than it actually is. At any rate, I think people's obsession with people eating poo sort of jumps around what the actual point of the movie is. There can be no true love under power. It's really a film about how authoritarianism corrupts even the most basic human desires into something hideous. The actual horrifying thing about Salo isn't the rape and murder, it's that the world is actually full of powerful people who are just as effed up as the people in that film.
The use of actual children is a bit rough though.
Tusk genuinely effed with me. Especially the pool scenes.
This came up on TV one afternoon and my mom invited me to watch this with her, and I'm thinking, oh, this is by Kevin Smith, I love Mallrats, and such. She left to do something else within 15 minutes, leaving me by myself, not knowing the first thing about the movie. Imagine my face.
Fuck. And that first 15 minutes really feels like a normal Kevin Smith movie. That must have been intense.
At the end of that movie, the only thing I could think or say to my BF was, why did they leave him like that? To this day it disturbs me that they straight up left him like that. In a encounter. Eating fish. Like WTF, he is still human. Fix him. Bring his ass inside to hang out. Give him a burger at least. 3 years later, my boyfriend and I still say, why did they leave him like that, out of the blue, or for any situation that it can be applied to lol, so at least we have that. Edit. A word.
After watching Tusk, I genuinely don't know my feelings on it. Because on one hand, literally what the F, it's really disturbing and gross, but on the other hand there were just moments where I'd laugh out loud. Like the guy screaming, walruses never CRYYYYY. Effing sent me for like 5 minutes. So I was thoroughly disturbed by the imagery, but some other parts of the movie managed to stop it from giving me nightmares.
I will never forget the scene where it cuts to the guy squirming on the floor as a walrus human. It is burned into my brain.
That's the one for me. I remember a friend suggested it because he knew I liked horror. When he said it was Kevin Smith, I kinda scoffed and did not expect much. Holy shit, I underestimated that man. Before this, I used to think nothing in a horror film could shock me anymore, but then they showed Justin Long in that Frankenstein monster walrus suit. My eyes got big and I felt sick. While I commend the cast and crew for creating such a disturbing movie, that's one I never ever want to see again.
I'd like to say Martyrs 2008, but chances are I'll rewatch it sometime. Then again, been meaning to rewatch Watership Down 1978 and have not managed to bring myself to it. So, edit, if you're going to check out Martyrs, don't read about it. Go in blind like I did.
Watership Down is a good book, interesting premise. Why they chose to make a effing animated film out of it is beyond me. And yes, I saw it in the theater when it came out. I was 11. Thanks, Mom.
Billed as a children's movie. Naturally, parents brought their kids to see it. I was one of them. Lots of imagery too disturbing for a kid.
That movie fed my 8-year-old self up for a while.
Let's go see a nice cartoon about bunnies. Yay. Blood, violence, poison gas, ghosts, death.
I worked with Pascal Laugier, the director of Martyrs, on one of his follow-up films. Deeply respected the guy going in and advocated quite a bit to work on his film. About 3 to 4 weeks later, I had lost all respect for him. F that guy. He's a pervert, a sadist and an all-around piece of poo human being. 2 weeks straight of women being beaten, bloodied and tortured. It was fake, of course. The director spent countless hours on the torture scenes, pushing the actresses to their absolute emotional limits to scream and cry as much as possible. It's really hard to describe what it is like experiencing multiple women crying and screaming for several hours a day, 2 weeks in a row despite being fake. It really affects you. One of the higher-up crew members quit because she claimed she caught him rubbing his DK through his pants during one of these scenes while behind the monitor. Nobody else claims to have seen it. The worst was when one of the lead actresses fell through a glass window on the last day of production. Wasn't safetied. Wasn't stunt glass. Wasn't in the script prior to director telling her to pound on it. Glass shatters. She was sliced neck to ear across her face. I was there. She's screaming bloody murder for her life. Glass barely missed her artery, as we were told later, and the effing C. Pascal Laugier turns to his first assistant director and director of photography and whispers fairly nonchalantly, "When can we start shooting again?" Within several hours the movie was done shooting and all them are hugging, celebrating, shaking hands. I felt I had PTSD for months after working on that film.
I'm guessing this is the incident. It sounds horrific. The poor girl, and anyone who witnessed it.
Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. F'd me up.
What was so messed up about this one? Never heard of it.
It's a documentary made to tell a baby about his father who was murdered by his mother. In the end, the mother also murders the baby.
In a murder-suicide, and much of the story is told through the eyes of Zachary's paternal grandparents who played nice with the vile piece of trash woman who murdered their only med student son in Pennsylvania because they wanted to raise their grandson when his mother was eventually convicted of murder, and they lost their only child. They talked about going home and committing suicide because they had nothing left to live for. By the grace of God, they find out their son's murderer was carrying their grandson. The mother of the child certainly had no remorse in toying with their grandparents' emotions via baby Zachary either. And then they lost baby Zachary too, their only link to their beloved son. A grandson they cherished more than life itself, it will wreck you. The grandparents are very emotionally honest in the documentary and it makes the viewer feel very close to their despair, etc. This is not a full-on layout of the entire story. There's so much more to the 13-year-old documentary. So just watch it.
The fact that everything was tied up in legal and bureaucratic tomfoolery, it's infuriating because it could have been different and Zachary might be here today. It leaves you angry, sad and defeated at the same time.
I feel like I'm not all that emotional of a person. But this movie, Jesus, it's the first movie, and the first thing, I have ever rage cried at. The emotions of the grandparents just broke my heart and infuriated me so much. That was 4 years ago, and it still makes me grit my teeth.
I was gonna say, A Clockwork Orange. Holy poo, it doesn't hold a candle to what you're describing.
What's worse is that the filmmaker initially created this documentary for the child to see when he grew up so that he could know who his father was.
I'd like to add that the narration is made to sound like it's speaking to a still-alive Zachary that will grow up and be able to see the documentary until the point his fate is revealed. Then the narrator speaks to him as a victim who shouldn't have had such a fate and dwells into his grandparents' effort to change things to prevent something similar from happening again.
Came here to say the same thing. Watched it 5 years ago and still not over it.
Threads. Up until a few years ago I'd have said the same. I was shown the entire film in school and had vivid nightmares for years. Instead of being paranoid about being vaporized without warning at all times, I started to look into the Cold War as a subject. I'm a bit obsessed now, and having rewatched Threads many times, it's an excellent film. The tiny details in it during the build-up show just how much effort went into it. I completely understand why you wouldn't want to watch it again, but as a cultural icon it's superb.
The actress who played the woman who pissed herself when the bomb went off trained at RADA for 5 years and her IMDb has only 1 entry. Woman who urinated, uncredited. Sad profession, acting.
She seems like a great lady too. She was a teacher and was really well loved by the community. I'm sure she saw the funny side.
Apocalypse Now. I know a lot of people love it, but the scene where the family is hiding something and so the soldiers kill them all and the something turns out to be a puppy. I just wanted existence to be done after that.
That effing film. You just reminded me of yet another film I was too young to see. Thanks, Mom.
My dad took my mom to see it for their first date. She didn't know what she was in for, plus was not a fan, especially because it was so long, plus she doesn't even like war movies. She used to jokingly say that she should have taken this as a sign. The Emoji Movie.
Disgusting.
Well, it was fucking one of yas.
Went with my wife and daughter. That was an expensive nap.
Leaving Las Vegas, Nicolas Cage lives in a putti hotel and actively, purposely drinks himself to death.
To make it even more depressing, the author of the book it's based on shot himself right after selling the movie rights. He was also an alcoholic, and the book was a kind of suicide note.
He deserved that Oscar for his performance though. A Serbian film edit woke up this morning to a ton of awards, thank you all. Just check out my Rainmeter posts, okay?
It feels like a sin even to mention this movie, because no matter how many times you say, but don't watch it. Seriously, someone watches it every time its name is spoken.
Oh, this sounds like a lovely educational story about the rich cultural history of Serbia. I think I'm going to let my kids watch it.
My brother's friend's mum let them watch the R-rated horror version of Jack Frost instead of the kid-friendly animated version. And that's how my 6-year-old brother first saw titties and a killer snowman.
Username checks out.
The premise of The Ring really makes more sense in this context.
I had seen this title pop up in threads like this for years and just the other day decided to watch it. It lives up to its reputation, I guess, but what everyone always fails to mention is how bad of a movie it is. It's just 2 hours of trauma p. Maybe it was lost on me, but I didn't see the artistic point of it all. Just horrible poo happening over and over, then it ends.
And that ending, WTF.
Mind giving me a TLDR to prevent me from watching it myself? Smiley face.
The person commits suicide with their son and wife, and then a guy comes in, unzips his fly, then the director says, start with the little one. For context, the film is necrophiliac and pedophilia.
Is it the one where he forces someone to rape their child, then someone also FSA dead head, or is that a different one?
Proof that some things need to be unmade.
I just looked up the plot and read the entire thing. What theft KKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKKNHow did crew members not quit? How much of what I just read do you actually see on camera? There's not even a moral message to the plot. I'm shook. Edit. I regret commenting as I now have to mentally revisit the plot line with every response. At least I'm not alone. Man facepalming, smiling face with tear.
The point of the film was trolling the Serbian censors. Oh, you want to censor Serbian movies ridiculously? Then I will make the worst and most brutal movie possible and name it Serbian film, lol.
I have heard about this one and just reading about it I know I should never watch it.
This is the worst movie for anyone to watch.
We don't talk about it. Never ever ever.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.